Hi. I'm here to speak to you today about my concerns as a mother of a second grader at Roberge, but please also know that I'm a local middle school teacher in the Pascack Valley, and I am in the thick of it with students all day. Childhood is not something that anyone gets to relive. They are years of our life that we don't get back. As we grow older, they merely become memories, hopefully fond ones. It saddens me to think that when my son looks back on these formative years, all of the good things like his first successful wrestling season, his introduction to elementary school, parties with friends, vacations with family, will be clouded with frustrating thoughts of masks, social distancing, school closures, and loss of activities and experiences. The kids are not okay. Anyone who says things like, oh, kids are so resilient, or they don't even care about the masks, is wrong. Of course they care. I watch all day long as my 6th grade students fiddle with them, pulling them away from their face so that they can just take a deep breath. They ask me to change them because they're wet or they're dirty, and they even ask me for a break, looking so distressed and uncomfortable. I constantly have to ask my students to speak up or repeat themselves, which then makes them more self-conscious and nervous. When they're given the option to work with a classmate, I watch as they all nervously gather together, unsure of how close they're allowed to be to their seatmate. My students are becoming more and more disengaged, indifferent, and anxious. Misbehavior is at an all-time high. I have never in 15 years as a teacher struggled with classroom management and discipline like I have in the last 2 years. Our children are frustrated, overwhelmed, and burdened with the fears of the adults around them. They smile and say they're okay because they are predominantly rule followers. They've been told to wear the mask and keep their distance, and so they do, but they're not okay. My 7-year-old has always loved school. He's been in school since he was 6 months old, and he has never once complained. This year, he now often says he hates school, and that absolutely kills me. He is smart and social and well-behaved, and I know that his feelings have nothing to do with his abilities or his wonderful classroom teacher or a lack of friendships. He feels like this because school now means almost 8 hours with his face covered. It means not being able to sit right next to a friend at lunch. It means having white circles on his classroom floor because he needs to keep his desk inside of them. It means being told not to breathe in another student's direction, and yes, he was told this by a teacher. It means indoor recess is sitting alone at your desk, drawing or staring at a computer screen because, playing cards would be too risky. It means if he's too close to a classmate who tests positive, he'll then have to sit home in isolation from his peers and watch his class through a computer screen for 5 days. How can anyone think that this is okay? How can anyone believe that all of this is a better option than potentially testing positive with COVID and being asymptomatic or possibly suffering cold or flu-like symptoms? How can we continue to do this to them? COVID is endemic. It is not going away, and our children are the least at risk, and yet they are being treated like vectors of disease. I'm not naive. I'm not going to say this is no big deal because I do know that to some families it is. I know that COVID has caused suffering and loss. I am not trying to negate that. But it is time to move on and find a way to live. And how we do that should be each family's choice. Because what we are doing to our babies and this way of life is not living. It's quite contradictory, actually, to act as though the masks are saving lives when we are literally impeding the lives of our children. If I can go to a bar or a restaurant unmasked and sit next to strangers, my child should be able to attend school unmasked. I'm continuing to remain hopeful that New Jersey's mask mandate will be lifted on February 10th, and if and when it does, I'd like to know that the Rivervale Board of Education will follow suit and lift mask requirements for our children. And in addition, to piggyback off of what Luana said before, the CDC recommendations for quarantining close contacts are exactly that. They're recommendations. This is not a mandate. We have to stop keeping perfectly healthy children at home. I do not personally know of one child who was quarantined from a school close contact who ended up testing positive. That's disgraceful, and it's so unacceptable to do to our kids. Enough is enough. According to the U.S. Surgeon General's advisory, depressive and anxiety symptoms have doubled during the pandemic. And according to the U.S. Department of Health Vital Statistics, which was reported in November of 2021, there were approximately 2,400 child suicides in the U.S. in 2020. Children were the only age group to show an increase in suicides from 2019 to 2020. Our children's most important years are passing them by, and we are failing them each day that we allow all of this to continue. Thank you.